The sun rose hot and heavy over the valley of Elah, painting the horizon with streaks of gold and red. The air was thick with dust and tension. On one ridge stood the army of Israel, their tents scattered across the hillsides, banners fluttering limply in the morning wind. Across the valley stood their enemies, the Philistines, strong and confident, their camp bristling with spears and iron shields. For weeks, the two armies had stared each other down, neither daring to advance. Yet every morning the standoff was broken by a sound that struck terror into Israel's camp. Thud, thud, thud. The earth seemed to quake with each step. Out from the Philistine lines emerged a man, a giant so vast, he seemed like a living fortress. His name was Goliath of Gath. Nearly 10 feet tall, his shoulders were broad as stone pillars, and his armor gleamed in the sun like the scales of a monstrous beast. His bronze helmet glinted. His coat of scales weighed more than most men, and his spear shaft was thick as a weaver's beam, its iron head alone heavier than a soldier's sword. Ahead of him trudged his armor-bearer, carrying a shield so massive it looked like a city gate. The giant's voice thundered across the valley, mocking, taunting, shaking the air like a storm. Why do you come out and line up for battle? Am I not a Philistine, and are you not the servants of Saul? Choose a man. Let him come down to me. If he is able to fight and kill me, we will be your servants. But if I overcome him and kill him, then you shall be our slaves. Laughter rumbled from his chest. I defy the armies of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. Silence followed. Not a single Israelite stirred. Soldiers gripped their swords but dared not step forward. Even King Saul, tall and strong, remained in his tent, fear tightening around his heart. For 40 days the scene repeated itself. Morning and evening, the giant bellowing his challenge, Israel shrinking back in shame. And with each day, courage ebbed away like water leaking from a cracked jar. Far from the battlefield, in the quiet hills of Bethlehem, a young shepherd watched over his father's sheep. His name was David, the youngest of 8 sons. He was small compared to his brothers, but his spirit was sharp and his heart was full of faith. He spent his days guiding the flock, playing his harp, and singing songs of the Lord under the wide open sky. Though his hands were callous from the staff and sling, they were gentle when he played music. His voice carried across the fields, lifting praises to the God of Israel. Yet David was no stranger to danger. Wolves, lions, and bears had prowled these hills, and more than once David had chased them down, rescuing lambs from their jaws. With nothing but his sling and his staff, he had struck them down, for he trusted the Lord who gave him strength. One morning, David's father Jesse called him from the fields. The old man's eyes were lined with worry. "Your brothers are with Saul's army in the valley of Elah," Jesse said. "Take this roasted grain and these loaves of bread to them, and these cheeses to their commander. See how your brothers are, and bring back word to me." David rose early the next day, left the flock with another shepherd, and set out with supplies strapped to his back. The road to Elah was long and winding, filled with dust, noise, and the shouts of soldiers moving toward the battlefield. When David finally arrived, he heard the war cry echoing across the camp as men lined up in formation. Excitement and fear mingled in the air like smoke before fire. He hurried to find his brothers, Eliab, Abinadab, and Shammah. As he greeted them, a deep, rolling voice interrupted the morning. The ground trembled. Goliath had come out once more. David watched, eyes narrowing, as the giant thundered his challenge. The men of Israel shrank back, whispering, their courage gone. David's heart burned within him. "Who is this uncircumcised Philistine," he cried, "that he should defy the armies of the living God?" The soldiers looked at him with surprise, but none answered. They only muttered about the reward King Saul had promised: riches, his daughter's hand in marriage, and freedom for the victor's family. Eliab turned on David sharply, his face flushed with anger. "Why have you come down here? With whom did you leave those few sheep in the wilderness? I know your pride and the insolence of your heart. You only came to watch the battle." David lifted his hands in protest. "What have I done now? Is there not a cause?" But word of David's boldness spread quickly through the camp, and soon it reached the ears of King Saul himself. Inside Saul's tent, the atmosphere was heavy with despair. Advisors whispered, soldiers paced, and the king himself sat in troubled silence. When David was brought in, a murmur of disbelief rippled through the room. He was just a boy, ruddy and bright-eyed, his frame lean from shepherd's work. David bowed. "Let no one lose heart on account of this Philistine," he said firmly. "Your servant will go and fight him." Saul stared at him in astonishment. "You cannot go against this Philistine to fight him. You are only a youth, and he has been a warrior since his youth." But David stood tall, his voice clear. "Your servant has been keeping his father's sheep. When a lion or a bear came and carried off a lamb, I went after it, struck it, and rescued it. When it turned on me, I seized it by the hair, struck it, and killed it. The Lord who delivered me from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear will deliver me from the hand of this Philistine." The king's eyes searched the boy's face and found no fear there, only faith. At last Saul spoke. Go, and the Lord be with you." He ordered his own armor to be placed upon David, the bronze helmet, the heavy coat of mail, the sword at his side. But when David tried to move, he stumbled under the weight. He shook his head. "I cannot go in these, for I have not tested them." Laying aside the armor, he took instead his shepherd's staff, his sling, and chose 5 smooth stones from the brook, placing them in the pouch of his bag. With nothing more than these, he stepped out to meet the giant. The armies held their breath as David walked into the valley. To the Israelites, he looked small and fragile, a mere boy facing an impossible foe. To the Philistines, he was a source of ridicule. Goliath's laughter boomed across the field when he saw him. "Am I a dog that you come me with sticks?" he sneered. He cursed David by his gods and bellowed, "Come here, and I will give your flesh to the birds of the air and the beasts of the field." But David's eyes did not waver. His voice rang out clear and steady, carrying across the valley, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin. But I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. This day the Lord will deliver you into my hand, and I will strike you down and cut off your head. And all the earth will know that there is a God in Israel, for the battle is the Lord's, and he will give you into our hands." The Philistine roared and began to move forward, his steps shaking the ground. His armor-bearer raised a shield before him. The Israelites trembled, some turning their faces away. But David ran forward. His feet pounded the earth as he reached into his bag and drew out a stone. With a swift motion, he placed it in a sling, whirling it round and round until it sang in the air. His arm released. The stone flew. It cut through the air like lightning, striking the giant square on the forehead. The sound echoed, a crack like thunder, and Goliath's eyes went wide. His massive body wavered, then toppled forward with a crash that shook the valley. Silence. The Philistines gasped in disbelief. The Israelites froze, stunned by what their eyes beheld. A boy had felled a giant. David did not hesitate. He ran to the fallen warrior, seized Goliath's massive sword, and with one swift stroke, cut off his head. He lifted it high, a symbol of God's victory. The Philistines broke. Terror seized them, and they fled toward their cities. Israel's soldiers erupted with a roar, surging after them, chasing them down the road to Gath and Ekron. The valley that had once echoed with the giants' taunts now rang with shouts of triumph. David stood amidst the chaos, his chest rising with deep breaths. Around him, men stared in awe. He was no longer just a shepherd boy. He was God's chosen instrument of victory. Saul summoned him that day, and from then on, David's name was spoken across Israel with honor. Yet David himself knew the truth. The battle had not been his, but the Lord's. And so the story of David and Goliath was told for generations, a tale of courage, faith, and the power of God to use the small to overcome the mighty.